Hey guys, this was your Monday quiz, and like I said before, that I allow the quiz to be open the day before because you must complete the quiz on the day that it's supposedly assigned, so that I can make a video, I can grade and make a video the next day, so that you can go back and see your grade and also see where you might have lost your points. So for this first quiz, a lot of you actually did pretty well. There are only a couple of things I really wanted to point out so that you don't have to lose points in like a silly things, because I don't think conceptually they were very hard for this quiz, but maybe it's just like how you write your answers, or maybe you're still unsure about how to provide enough evidence or enough explanation for your answer to be good, right? So let's look at this number one together. I don't think anybody did part A wrong. So you guys had this spinner, and then the donation of $2 is required. So obviously, if you are not earning anything, you're gonna lose $2. And this is an easy problem because they already gave you the X values when X represents the net contribution to the charity. So it's very possible that they would make this kind of problem, but just defining X, but you have to come up with the values of X. But this one, like I said, it's a rather easy problem where they gave you everything. So let's see. The only time, so this is for the charity, it's not for you, right? So the only time they will lose money is when they do $10, right? If someone wins $10, then they will lose money. However, that one is only one out of 10. So it only has 1 out of 10, which is 0.1. I think this is simple enough that obviously you could show work, like write 1 over 10 and then write 0.1, or just write it as 1 over 10. But if you do write in fraction, make sure that you simplify as much as possible. And $1 will happen when you're giving out $1 back, right? So that's 1, 2, 3 of them. So it's a 3 out of 10, which is 0.3. And then lastly, obviously, the probability has to add up to 1, and it's a 0.3 and 0.1, so this must be 0.6. And that's it. You don't really need to show any like explanation or anything like that. The only thing you could show is definitely like the fraction version before you went to decimal. All right, part B. Also, nobody got it wrong, but this part I do want to point something out because not everyone wrote the unit at the end. It says, what is the expected value of the net contribution to the charity for one play of the game? So you know how to find the expected value. Expected value, the formula, is sum of P of X times X. And since there are only 3 of them, you should write out your work, because if you don't, you will get a partially correct, not essentially correct. And then this goes 0.7. But this is money, right? So you need to write the expected value is $0.7 or 70 cents. You need to write it with unit or else it's not complete. All right, part C. The charity would like to receive a net contribution of $500 from this game. What is the fewest number of times the game must be played for the expected value of the net contribution to be at least 500? So I saw a lot of you solving this problem with the equal sign. And as long as you do it correctly, you will still get to the right answer. But the fact that it used at least indicates inequality. So you really should be using inequality. So we found the expected value from part B. An expected value was 0.7. And we want to know how many times they should play to have at least 500. Okay, so again, it's not greater because at least includes that value. So make sure you set up things correctly, because my fear is that even if you get the same, even if you get the right answer, if it's not written correctly, as correctly as possible, what could happen is it could bring your overall grade down because, as I mentioned to a couple of you, the AP exam doesn't give you 0.5 points. When it comes to 2.5 or 3.5, they are forced to round it up or round down. And what determines that up and down is overall how well your answers are constructed. So it is very important not to lose any points in this kind of things. Like you might think, oh, but it's inequality, that's not the central point and the main part, and you're right, it's not, but you don't want to give any reason for them to doubt of your ability to either mathematical thinking or statistical understanding or any of that, okay? So just craft a well-constructed answer from the process to the end, okay? So I know some of you did equal sign and you still gave a correct answer, but the most correct way to establish this answer will be writing it like this. And then you can show work. And it's 714.286. And since it says at least, your answer is not going to be 714. It's going to be 715. Right? Because if you actually do 714, you'll be less than 500. You're not guaranteed of 500, but like 715 will guarantee that value. So the answer is 715. And write the answer again. Don't just leave it as work. You want to write down the 715 place will be needed because essentially all statistical questions are word problems. And so you don't want to just leave the answer as like a number. Part D, based on last year's event, the charity anticipates that the spin the pointer game will be played 1,000 times. The charity would like to know the probability of obtaining a net contribution of at least $500 in 1,000 plays of the game. The mean and the standard deviation of the net contribution to the charity in 1,000 plays of the games are $700 and $92.79 respectively. So I guess, all right, I know this question says use a normal distribution to approximate, but that doesn't mean that you can just use it. You have to be able to give a condition why the normal distribution was an okay thing to use. And this is a tricky part of the reading the problem and then really knowing the intent, why the question was written that way. But unless they say assume all conditions are met, or you say assuming that this is a normal distribution, you will not just go and jump in and use a normal distribution. Okay, so you have to give a reason why normal distribution was an okay thing to use, and that's why the answer included large sample size, because we have 1,000 n equal 1,000, right? And the large sample condition was, I think, greater than 20, right? And so since this is a large sample size to the central limit theorem, that we could assume or we could approximate normal distribution, or you can use normal approximation. And so this is the part where you guys got points off. Not because you did this part wrong, everybody did that fine, but because you got tricked into the word use. Like I said, unless they say assume all the conditions are met, or assume that that the distribution is normal. If they just say use it, that still means that you need to check the condition. Okay, so I hope that is clear, and that you wouldn't get tricked into it. Okay, and again, like I said, unless they say assume conditions are met or things like that, it's always better idea to write out all the conditions and see if they are met. Okay. Yeah, so then we know that this is a normal distribution because the large sample size, it has a 792.79. So then we are going to use a z-score because we want to know less than 500, right? Less than 500 and this way. So this is the z-score we want to figure out. you are going to use a, what's it called? So it's if I write everything out for the test, like this would be what it looked like. So I would do the probability of x less than 500, and then I'll change that to z less than 500 minus 700 over 92.79, and I'll just plug it into the CDF. I wouldn't even use normal CDF and blah, 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 as long as I have this symbol written out. Well, they have to know that I'm using either table or either calculator to get that, right? So this gives me around 0.9844. So it means that they have 98.44% that charity would obtain a net contribution of at least, sorry. So it's actually this way, sorry. This way. Sorry, my symbols are all messed up that way. Yeah. So that's how you do it, okay? Yeah, so this question was actually the one that I saw more incorrect answers. Or actually, it's not incorrect, it's like incomplete answers, right? It wasn't completely perfect. But number 2, you guys did a great job. You guys, I mean, obviously, I know I think I emphasized the type 1 and type 2 error. You will definitely see them. Not just like how to interpret it, like this question, but I really want you to review power, beta, alpha, the relationship between them, and all of that, okay? And so have all of that written out somewhere, and I will probably try to make a review video, even though I uploaded the link to the power and the type 1 and 2 tests through the College Board. I will try to make a short one so that you guys can just watch it quick. And you guys did great. Type 2 error is a reject, but it's 3 parts, right? I mean, it's not necessary for this one to get essentially correct. As long as you put it in a context, it gave you points. But usually how things work is that you define what it is without the context. You define it with context, and then you say what the result or the conclusion would be, okay? And so type 2 error means failing to reject a null hypothesis when, in fact, that the alternative hypothesis was true, right? So what is that in context? What 35% of the residents are able to pass when less than 35% would pass. And what does that mean? Well, try to use the word that they were using. That the fund will be cut, basically, right? And so, like, I know I saw some of them like, oh, it would be like the citizens would be less healthy, or like blah blah blah, but like try to use the wording that the question had to avoid any like assumption that you're assuming about something when it's not very clear in the problem. Part B was also fine. I think some of you are just confused. When you reject a null hypothesis, then you have enough evidence for your alternative hypothesis. When you fail to reject a null hypothesis, that means you do not have enough evidence to support the alternative hypothesis. So just remind you how to write that answer. There's always 3 parts. You compare p-value to alpha. You make a statement about null hypothesis. You make a statement about alternative hypothesis, all in context. Okay. C was great too. A lot of you did well. The reason, the primary flaw is definitely the voluntary response, right? Like this survey wasn't random sample. So then you can't represent the entire population because there's bias. Well, you need to be go deeper than just the sample will be biased because it's vague. Because this one is very clear which way it would swing. So you wanted to talk about the variable, which is people who are more physically fit would go take the test. And because they're physically fit, they will most likely to pass, which means that you would have an overestimation of the residents who can pass this test, right? So there are 3 steps. Some of you forgot either discussing about the variable and why it affects the survey, or you didn't make a conclusion that is very concrete. You just said it has bias. It's not enough, okay? So good job, guys. Please continue to do a good job with this. And then I'll see you tomorrow.